It was a morning painted with national pride. Streets were draped in tricolors, children held tiny flags, and loudspeakers echoed patriotic songs. But amid the festive buzz of Delhi's Republic Day on January 26, 2025, something sinister was about to eclipse the nation's joy. At the Ghazipur flower market, a place usually blooming with vibrant colors, an abandoned suitcase emitted a foul, disturbing stench. The crowd that gathered around it had no idea that inside lay a horror that would leave even hardened police officers shaken. When the police finally arrived and unzipped the black trolley bag, the bustling market turned into a crime scene. Inside was a charred, disfigured corpse of a woman. Her body had been scorched so severely that her features were almost unrecognizable. But what was most chilling wasn't just the burning, it was her posture. Her hands were tied with an electric wire, her feet bound by a plastic cord, and her face smashed beyond recognition. The suitcase wasn't just hiding a body. It was hiding a monstrous story that had just begun to unravel. The police moved swiftly, but they had almost nothing to go on. No ID, no missing person report matching the body, no witnesses. Just a burned woman in a suitcase dumped at a marketplace. The autopsy would later reveal shocking details. Before being set on fire, the woman had been brutally beaten. Her skull bore deep wounds and her ribs were cracked. It was clear this wasn't a spontaneous act of violence. This was planned, cold, calculated. But why, and by whom? Detectives began combing through CCTV footage of the Ghazipur area. The footage, although grainy, revealed a crucial clue. Just after midnight on January 26th, a small hatchback car was seen stopping near the flower market. Two men stepped out and tossed the suitcase onto a garbage pile before driving off. It was dark, but the license plate was partly visible. Investigators quickly tracked the vehicle. It was registered under the name Jitendra Yadav, a resident of Badarpur, a man with no prior criminal record. An ordinary name on an extraordinary day. Jitendra was brought in for questioning. At first, he denied everything, said he had no idea what the police were talking about. But under sustained interrogation, cracks appeared. Then, the truth exploded like a bombshell. The dead woman was his wife, and her name was Asha Devi. The woman in the suitcase wasn't a stranger. She had shared a home, meals, and dreams with the very man now being questioned about her murder. But what could drive a husband to burn his own wife? Asha was reported missing on January 24th, just 2 days before her body was found. Her family had already grown anxious but never imagined such an end. But the shock wasn't over. Investigators soon discovered Jitendra wasn't alone in this crime. Another name surfaced, Ravi Yadav, Jitendra's cousin, the man seen on camera helping dispose of the suitcase. When Ravi was brought in, the story began to twist into something even darker than imagined. Ravi, under pressure, broke first. He spilled the secret that turned the case on its head. He told investigators that Asha had been suspicious of Jitendra for weeks. She had been tracking his movements, confronting him about late-night calls, whispered conversations, and emotional distance. Jitendra, Ravi revealed, wasn't just cheating. He was planning something far worse, and Asha had found out. Her confrontation days before the murder had sealed her fate. Investigators raided Jitendra's phone and uncovered damning evidence. Intimate chats, photographs, and love notes exchanged with a woman named Anjali. She wasn't just a casual affair. She was Jitendra's obsession. She was also married, and her relationship with Jitendra wasn't just emotional. It was conspiratorial. The two had plotted, planned and fantasized about a future together, a future that didn't include Asha. Her existence had become an obstacle they were desperate to erase. When confronted with this evidence, Jitendra's face changed, cold, unapologetic. She was in the way, he said, emotionless. He admitted to the crime. On the night of January 24th, he had called Asha to the guest room under the pretense of reconciliation. There, with Ravi's help, they strangled her with a wire, beat her, stuffed her body into a suitcase, and set it on fire. The smell had overwhelmed the house, so they loaded the bag into the car and dumped it in Ghazipur, thinking the trash fire would erase all traces. But fate had other plans. The nation celebrated its 75th Republic Day, unaware that under its feet a woman's burnt corpse lay in silence. And the story had begun with a suitcase. But what lay ahead was more twisted than anyone could imagine. Because just as the police thought they had closed the case, a call came from a small town in Uttar Pradesh that would open an entirely new chapter. A second woman, claiming to be Jitendra's real wife, had stepped forward. And her story would unravel everything once believed to be true. The Ghazipur suitcase murder had already shaken Delhi. But when that unexpected phone call came from a remote town in Uttar Pradesh, the case cracked open in an entirely new direction. A woman named Sulekha Yadav contacted the police, claiming that she was Jitendra's legal wife, not the woman found dead in the suitcase. The room fell silent. Investigators stared at each other in disbelief. If Sulekha was telling the truth, then who was Asha Devi? And how many lives had Jitendra been living in secret? Detectives immediately traced Sulekha and brought her in for questioning. She appeared visibly distressed, yet composed enough to tell her story. She had married Jitendra nearly 8 years ago, in a small ceremony in her hometown. The couple had 2 children together. But over time, Jitendra's visits home became infrequent. He often claimed his work in Delhi kept him away. Eventually, he stopped coming altogether. When she confronted his family, they brushed her off. Now, seeing the news of the suitcase murder, she recognized not just the man, but also the home where it happened. Police were stunned. Jitendra had 2 wives, 2 lives, and now 1 murder. But if Sulekha was his legal wife, then Asha wasn't, or so it seemed. That's when an even more troubling revelation surfaced. Asha's family confirmed that she had married Jitendra just 1 year ago, believing he was a bachelor. They had no idea he was already married with children. Worse yet, Asha was pregnant, 2 months along, as the autopsy revealed. Her murder wasn't just an act of rage, it was an attempt to erase multiple lives. Investigators now had motive, opportunity, and an expanding web of deceit. Jitendra had lied to Asha, betrayed Sulekha, and likely manipulated both women. But there was still one thread that hadn't been pulled. Anjali, the mysterious woman in his phone. She was the emotional center of this triangle. She wasn't just an affair. She was the flame that burned behind Jitendra's darkest intentions. And when police traced her location, they were shocked to discover Anjali was Asha's cousin. Yes, the murdered woman and Jitendra's lover were blood relatives, raised in the same house, played in the same courtyards, shared secrets as girls. But one had married Jitendra, while the other had fallen in love with him behind closed doors. When Anjali was brought in for questioning, she first denied everything. She claimed she hadn't spoken to Jitendra in months, but her call logs, WhatsApp chats, and private emails told a very different story. They had been in daily contact even after Asha's pregnancy was confirmed. What emerged next was darker than fiction. Anjali confessed to the affair and admitted she was in love. But she insisted she didn't want Asha dead. She claimed Jitendra had told her he was in a loveless marriage and that Asha was controlling, emotionally abusive, and possibly cheating on him. Lies, manipulation, pure distortion of truth. But Anjali believed it, and so she never questioned it when Jitendra began talking about a way out. She just didn't know that way out meant cold-blooded murder. But here's where the twist deepened. Police recovered a deleted voice message from Jitendra's phone. It was a recording he had sent to Ravi, his cousin and accomplice, just a week before the murder. In it, he said, "It's only a matter of one night. After that, no more lies, no more hiding, just me and her, free forever." The intent was clear. This wasn't just spontaneous violence. It was a premeditated execution planned with surgical precision. The suitcase wasn't an afterthought. It was part of the plan from the beginning. Back at the Ghazipur market, forensic teams were sent again. This time, they combed through nearby dumpsters and trash heaps. What they found was damning. Traces of gasoline, partially burned women's clothing, and a torn marriage photo. It was Asha and Jitendra smiling. But now, their image was soaked in soot and ash. That picture, once a symbol of union, had become a grotesque metaphor for what their relationship truly was. A smokescreen covering something rotten. Public outrage exploded. News channels ran 24/7 updates. Social media boiled over with fury. How could a man marry two women, have an affair with a third, and murder one of them, all while pretending to be an average, hard-working husband? Even more chilling, how many other women had been in his life? Were there more secrets? Was Jitendra just a liar, or something far worse? As the courtroom prepared for its first hearing, the media dubbed it the case of the burning lies. But what truly terrified the nation wasn't just the murder. It was the illusion that someone could live three lives in parallel, unnoticed, until one suitcase blew it all open. The courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the hallways. People who had never met Asha came just to watch the man who burned her body face justice. Jitendra Yadav, the once soft-spoken, charming man who managed to juggle three women, was now the face of India's most chilling love and death triangle. But as the trial began, something unexpected happened. His defense team introduced a new theory, one that claimed Jitendra didn't act alone, that someone else had planned it all, that someone, they suggested, was Anjali, Asha's cousin and Jitendra's secret lover. According to the defense, she was the true mastermind. They painted her as jealous, manipulative, and desperate to be with Jitendra at any cost. She whispered poison into his ears, the lawyer said. She wanted her cousin gone. Jitendra was just the hand. She was the mind. The courtroom murmured. Cameras flashed. Was it possible? Had Anjali orchestrated Asha's murder using love as a weapon? The prosecution hit back hard. They brought in digital forensics, chats, calls, messages. While Anjali's betrayal was undeniable, there was no clear evidence she had planned a murder. No messages instructing Jitendra to kill, no money transferred, no threats. Just emotional manipulation. And yes, silence. Silence when she should have spoken up. But that wasn't enough for murder charges. Anjali broke down on the stand, sobbing, "I didn't know he would kill her. I thought he would leave her, not destroy her." Then came the final piece of the puzzle. Ravi, Jitendra's cousin, took the stand and told the full truth. Under oath, and with a heavy heart, He admitted he helped Jitendra because he was bound by blood. But what he said next silenced the courtroom. This wasn't his first time, Ravi confessed. Jitendra had done something like this before, years ago. Back in our village, another girl went missing. He said she ran off. Now, I don't know anymore. Suddenly, Jitendra wasn't just a cheater or even just a murderer. He was possibly a serial predator, hiding in plain sight. Police reopened the cold case from Jitendra's village. A girl named Pooja, who had been dating him briefly, had disappeared without a trace. Her case had gone cold. No body, no leads. But now, investigators began digging into old wells and forgotten forests. While that part of the story remains open, it cast a long, dark shadow over Jitendra's character. The court took notice. Back in Delhi, the final arguments began. The prosecution emphasized the planning, the motive, the lies, how Jitendra lured Asha to the guest room, drugged her, and then choked the life out of her. How he burned her body to erase her identity. How he enlisted his cousin to help and almost got away with it. They reminded the jury of the unborn child Asha carried. 2 lives, the lawyer said, holding up the charred photo recovered from the trash. 2 lives, stuffed into a suitcase. Jitendra's lawyers pleaded for leniency. They described his poor background, the pressure of dual relationships, and claimed he acted under emotional stress. But the judge wasn't moved. The evidence was overwhelming, the planning undeniable, and the cruelty unforgettable. The verdict came swiftly: guilty of murder, destruction of evidence, and criminal conspiracy. Ravi, too, was convicted, though with a lighter sentence due to his confession and cooperation. Anjali, she walked free, but her life, her reputation, and her family ties were left in ruins. The sentence shook the courtroom. Jitendra Yadav was given the death penalty. In a country where death sentences are rare, especially in cases of domestic murders, this was a clear message. The judge stated, this was not just a murder. It was a betrayal of love, of family, of humanity. A calculated act that desecrated the institution of marriage and motherhood. There can be no mercy. For many, it was justice. For others, it was too little, too late. As Jitendra was led away in chains, Sulekha, the real wife, watched in silent rage. She had lost her husband, her children's father, and any sense of stability. Asha's parents sat with hollow eyes. Their daughter had believed she found love, only to be buried in a suitcase. And Anjali, well, she disappeared from public life altogether, swallowed by shame and guilt. 3 families torn apart. All because one man couldn't be honest, and one woman was in the way. Outside the courtroom, candles were lit. Posters were raised with Asha's face, once burned, now shining in justice. Activists called for reforms in marriage laws, better background checks, and stronger punishment for bigamy and deception. Asha's story had become a national cautionary tale, a tragic example of how unchecked lies and unchecked lust could end in murder. But even with the verdict delivered, one question still haunts everyone who followed this case. How many more Jitendras are hiding in plain sight, behind sweet smiles, warm promises, and deadly lies?